In a previous presentation, I discussed the characteristics of effective research proposals. In this presentation, I'll briefly discuss the characteristics of research proposals that are considered as poor research proposals or ineffective research proposals. So why is it that certain research proposals get rejected? This is a question that we will try to find answers to in this presentation. So it will not aid to the body of knowledge or scholarship substantially. So there is lack of significance. In some cases, there is some substance in the research in the topic, but the topic lacks novelty. And so in many cases, it is a kind of repetition of the studies that have already been conducted. Secondly, the scope. So in many cases, the topic of the research proposal is either too broad or too narrow. And so the two broad topics are topics that are generally difficult to be conducted in the particular time and resources that are generally available to research students or to researchers in general. In some cases, the research topics are too narrow, and so they cannot adequately cover the fields that they should cover. And so these are the two main issues related to the topic of poor research proposals. Then, in many cases, the introduction and background section of poor research proposals is inadequately presented. There is superficial presentation of the background or in the introduction to the topic. The topic is not, the introduction is not concise, and in many cases, it lacks coherence or the lining up of ideas and concepts in the particular field on which the topic is based. Thirdly, poor research proposals have research questions and objectives, in some cases hypotheses, that are either not consistent with the research topic or the scope of the research topic of the research. In many cases, the research objectives and research questions are not aligned with each other. So the research objectives are presenting something else, and the research questions are presented in a way that are not actually representing the research objectives. In many cases, the hypotheses are not representing the research topic or the research questions. Again, in some cases, the research questions or hypotheses or objectives are divergent, and so they are not focused. So one research question is aimed at exploring one thing, while the other one is aimed at exploring something very different or not in line with the requirements of the topic. So divergence and non-focus of the research questions or objectives or hypotheses is another characteristic of poor research proposals. And then the other thing that can make a poor research proposal is the poor presentation of the research questions or objectives in terms of language and grammar. And in many cases, research students, especially who have to write the research proposals in a language that is not their first language, might face such problems. The next important thing that makes the research proposal in the category of the poor research proposal is the lack of gap analysis or in-depth gap and not inclusion of in-depth gap analysis or literature review. So the literature review is generally sketchy. It is not comprehensively covering the topic. In some cases, the literature review is there, but it's not systematic, and so there's lack of coherence, lack of the integration of the various concepts and ideas. So the ideas are all over the place, but there is a lack of a central argument revolving around it. The other thing that makes this section poor is the irrelevant or non-inclusion of significant sources. So either inclusion of irrelevant sources or material related to literature review or gap analysis, or ignoring significant sources, significant authors in the particular area in which you are working, or the non-inclusion of theories and concepts. Again, this is generally mainly because of lack of in-depth reading on the part of the research student or the researchers who have developed the research proposals. Then uncritical and descriptive presentation of the literature review, which reflects lack of critical analysis, is something that makes the research proposals weak. Poor presentation, again, presentation is very important in whatever section of the research proposal. So poor presentation in terms of language, grammar, and articulation is again something that makes the research proposal a weak research proposal. In many cases, the research proposals are stuffed with jargon and references. So the ideas of others are simply presented without critical analysis, without the voice of the researchers or the students themselves. And so that makes it a weak research proposal. And lack of clear gap identification and analysis towards the end of the literature review section, again, is something that impacts the quality of this section of the research proposal. Then lastly, the research methodology. So if there are problems with the proposed research methodology, again, that will lead to the conclusion that the research proposal has weakness, and in many cases such research proposals might either be rejected or might be returned for major revisions. So, for example, the research methodology section might have issues such as the non-alignment with the research questions and objectives. The research methodology is a means to an end, and the end is to achieve the research objectives and to find answers to our research questions or to find evidence for or against our research hypotheses. So if the research model or research methodology is not aligned with our research objectives or questions, that will make this section weak. Again, the other thing is that we need to rationalize our research methodological choices, such as the rationalization of our research design, the rationalization of our research, of our data collection and analysis sections, and so on. So if these choices are not rationalized, for example, if someone has adopted mixed method research, they need to rationalize that. If someone has adopted qualitative research design and qualitative research samples, or particular research data collection methods or analysis methods, there should be rationalization and justification of those methods. Then, if that is not the case, that makes the research proposal, this part of the research proposal, weaker or poorer, not comprehensive or detailed enough. It is important that the research methodology section should be comprehensive and detailed. So if this, it is at a descriptive level, it does not adequately and comprehensively present the methodological choices, that will make it a poorer section. Missing and possible limitations of the methodological choices or the research methodology section, and lack of delimitation or boundaries, mentioning boundaries of your research is something. If that is missing, again, that's a weaker point of research proposals. Then missing or inadequate timeline and schedules. Timeline and schedules are important for research proposals, and so if this is missing, that's an issue. Missing or inadequate budgetary details, again, this makes the research proposal weaker. And overall, the issues of format, structure, language, and referencing, these are also important because the presentation of the research proposal is also very important. So lack of care in terms of the presentation and the formatting of the research proposal will also give the impression that that there is carelessness on the part of the ones who have presented the research proposals, and so this will also impact the quality of the research proposal. So these are some of the main issues that can lead to the production of and presentation of poor research proposals, and ultimately either the complete rejection of the research proposals or the return of the research proposals with major revisions on the part of the research students. And this is something that generally research students and their supervisors would not want to get at the end of hard work that they have put in the preparation, in the planning, preparation, and presentation of their research proposals.